Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you how to create this beautiful hover effect. Every time you hover on it, it changes color, which is beautiful. It's like a nice little highlighter. That's fun. But the best part is that we're using React and CSS. So we're using a real DOM. Well, React is technically a virtual DOM, but it's still a DOM. And with a DOM, we're going to make it work on mobile devices. It's going to be the perfect natural hover effect. So when your fingers on the text, it's going to light up. When it's pulled off the text, it's going to go away. So it's going to work for mobile and desktop. Right, let's get into it. So you're welcome to use VS Code and use your imports and exports, but in this case, I am going to use CodePen. So you can create a CodePen account. Follow along with me. First thing you're going to do is click on your, once you create an account, it's free. You're going to click on your face and you're going to click on New Pen, and you'll have a page like this. And you can adjust the sizes of the page by playing around with this. So just get comfortable with the interface if you're new to it. And then once you're comfortable with it, the first thing you want to do is click on this gear icon. Once you click on this gear icon, you will see none of here. I normally always set it to Babel because I work with React. It says JSX there, but we'll leave it like that. Additionally, you want to, because we can't import directly on CodePen, we can't use imports directly, unless you're on a paid account, I think. We need to actually use a CDN. So it's the same as saying import React DOM. So here we're importing React, and here we're importing React DOM. I will include these links in the description down below. Once you've got Babel, React, and React DOM, you can save and close. And you'll notice your JS has changed to JS Babel, which is awesome. Now that we are ready to rock and roll, the first thing we want to start off in this tutorial is by setting up our React component called Touch Hover Effect. This component will manage the hover state and the color changes for effect. This is essentially our atomic React component that will work seamlessly with the rest of our React code. You may notice something odd here that you might not have seen before is our export isn't here, but instead we're doing this. And it's essentially because we're in CodePen, we can't import or export, so we're basically exporting to root, and we will need to specify root in the HTML. And there you have it. We've got our root over here, and we've got our root over here. And we've got no errors anywhere. And if you want to see your console, we can just clear that. Don't worry too much about that. We've got no errors. Well, don't worry about the error you see there. We've got no errors over here, which is fine. Right, so now we can move on to the next step. We start with our constructor, which is a special method used to initialize our component. This is where we set up our initial state and define the properties. In this specific case, our constructor is doing two things. Firstly, we're defining an array named this.colors. This array contains a set of color values formatted in HSL values, which is all over here, boom, 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 boom. Basically, think of them as the highlighter colors. As you can see, each color represents a different hue. We will cycle through when the hover effect is activated. So we'll start with red, then we'll go light blue, then we go green, then we go yellow, then we go blue, then we go indigo, then we go violet, then we go purple, etc., 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 like you saw with the hover effect at the start of this tutorial. And secondly, we are initializing our component state with two properties, hover and color index. The hover state will help us track whether the element is being hovered over or not, starting at false because initially the user isn't hovering on the element, and the color index starts at 0, meaning our hover effect will begin with our first color in the array, which is in this case obviously red. Next up, we need to manage our hover state. So our set hover method will be responsible for updating the hover state and cycling through the colors array. Obviously, this doesn't work for mobile devices. So we actually need to create an additional thing called handle touch start and handle touch end. These two event handlers will manage the hover effects activation and deactivation on touched devices. And just so that it's a little bit more legible, let's just move that over there. All right. So hopefully you're following along. We're halfway done. Let's keep moving forward. And here we are, diving deeper into the render function where the magic happens. So on the screen, we've got a neat little variable called hover class. Think of it as a switch. It flips between adding a hover effect class or staying empty. So this little switch controls whether our text lights up with the animation or whether the hover effect is on or off or not, basically. So hover on, switches on. Hover off, it turns off, if that makes sense. Next up, we crafted a style object. This is like a chameleon almost, so to speak. So our color palette, where we've got the CSS variable named --hover -effect -color. Now, this isn't just any static color. It changes dynamically. How? Well, it takes cues from the color index, which we've already set up at the top over here. Now, the last thing to pay attention to, which is relatively interesting, is obviously the on-mouse enter, the on-mouse leave, on-touch start, and on-touch end. So basically, on-mouse enter is like basically saying hello, waving, greeting someone. On-mouse leave is saying goodbye. Okay, we have to deactivate. And basically, we're using on-touch start and on-touch end to manage it for mobile devices, because mobile devices don't have a DOM. And the rest of here with this text, how it's styled it, that doesn't matter too much. There's no need to have it as span. That was just a choice. So you can have it all in one line. And now that we've done that, this should be good working code. But obviously, when we look at the code over here, we don't see anything. The styles have not been applied. Why? Because we haven't added the CSS. So now we have to dive deeper into that. So for the sake of brevity, I've just included the basic styling over here. I'll talk about the more important stuff shortly. So yeah, obviously this is just media query, so it's better for mobile devices. Let's just press enter. In your style, it might not be necessarily that important. And then we've got our text part over here, which is over here, and which is also not too important for this effect. So we're just going to bring this, let's just keep that all together. But we actually want to have a lot of the hover logic here as well. So I'm just going to look at this, scroll down, look at this, and you can see all the values. And we can move on to the next part. The heart of our hover magic is all in our CSS. So let's start off with the .hoverable, right? So I'm just going to put this in over here, and we can just read through this briefly. So obviously, the position relative. Think of this as telling our stage where to stand in the grand scheme of the page. Everything we do inside hoverable will now be relative to this very spot. Next, we can crank up the text size with the font size. That's basic. Hopefully, I don't have to explain that to you guys. The line height is just the gap between the text lines to make the spacing nice and it look nice. And obviously, overflows to make sure if any effect happens, it's hidden. And normally, in this specific styling, overflow might be excessive. In fact, you might want to specify your overflow. So you probably only need to do it on the x-axis. But in this case, it actually, looking at what it did there, I think overflow is perfect. So we'll leave it as is right there for now. Right, so then outside of that, we can move on to the next part. Next, we've got something special. It is our touch-action, and we're setting it to manipulation. This is a nifty little instruction that tells the browser, hey, I got this. It's optimizing the touch interactions like pinch zooming and double tapping, ensuring that our effects respond swiftly and smoothly. It's a critical part of this effect. Next, we've got our cursor, which we set to pointer. It's a universal sign that something is clickable. When users see this familiar pointer, they'll be itching to hover over our text and see what happens. And lastly, we've got our user dash select to none. And this is purely set. The reason why we set this like this is because when we are hovering over this on a mobile device, we don't want to be able to select the text so that it's got a more natural feel. Next, we need to peek behind the curtain with .hoverable over here before. And basically, it lets us know that there's a pseudo element, which is crucial for creating the hover effect. It's an invisible partner waiting for its cues to dazzle, essentially. With position absolute, we free this element from the flow of the document, positioning it exactly where we need it, stretching from left 0 to right 0, and sitting at the bottom 0 of its parent. It's ready to take the stage at a moment's notice. And the more interesting things here, in my view, with covering, we have this transform scale x 0. Initially, it's a no-show, scale down to nothing, but with the wave of hover wand, it grows to full width thanks to the transform scale x1 in our hover effect class. You can see it over here and over here. So that's one of the core things. It's what makes it visible, the pseudo element visible. And then obviously how we get it to sweep across the spotlight like we do, like this, it's basically transforming from bottom right to bottom left. Quite simple. And obviously this is got nothing to do with hover working on mobile, more so how this hover effect works. And the reason why we have a z index of -1, our pseudo element stays behind the scenes, not interfering with our text. And this basically allows it to be a background partner to the text, so that if we didn't set it to this, it would cover the text. So we make sure it stays behind the text essentially. Next part is self-explanatory. This is just a transition animation. It's what makes this look so silky smooth. And then we get to the most interesting part, the background variable. Lastly, the background variable, the var --hover -effect -color HSL200, 100%, 80%. The variable here lets us change the background color on the fly, adding a splash of color to the performance. If no color is chosen, it defaults to the serene sky blue, ensuring that the show will always go on. It will never not show a color, which is quite critical. And just like that, we've got a beautiful hover effect, and this hover effect will work on mobile devices as well. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.